Why, Himanshu, it is taking time for this recording thing? It is just moving.
I think recording has started. I think I can see the recording bottom here.
Yeah. It is okay. Yeah. Okay. So, so thank you, Dr. Himanshu, for joining this great lecture program. We are grateful to you for agreeing to be speaking on such an important topic. Dr. Himanshu is a great friend of mine, and he has been continuously working on political theory issues for a couple of years. He did his post-graduation from University of Hyderabad and his PhD from Center for Comparative Political Theory, Jawaharlal Nehru University under Professor Nivedita Menon. Dr. Himanshu is working closely on many important issues. For example, he did a great work on the Kandhamal conflicts. He has interest in issues of politics of dialogues. He also has interest in issues of multicultural citizenship. He also likes to debate on some of the contemporary issues on secularism and many other issues. He has many important publications to his credit. So on behalf of the department and personally, I feel it is a privilege for all of us to speak and hear from a colleague like Dr. Himanshu. So with these words, and today Dr. Himanshu will be speaking on the idea of cultural nationalism, remembering Vivekananda and Aurobindo. So he will be speaking on this. And I request my colleague, Dr. Pratima Sarangi, to formally welcome Dr. Himanshu on behalf of the department and the university. Dr. Pratima.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, all of you. On behalf of the School of Political Science, Gangadhar Meher University, I welcome you, sir. And without taking much more time, students are eagerly waiting to listen from you. And it is a very nice topic also that you'll be speaking on the idea of cultural nationalism, remembering Vivekananda and Aurobindo. And over to you, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
Yeah. So, Dr. Himanshu, probably, we will start with your lecture, and you take your own time. So once your lecture gets over, we'll have a question answer session by the students. So I request Dr. Himanshu to start his lecture now. Thank you.
So thank you, Professor Swain, and to all the teachers of Gangadhar Meher University. So namaste to all of you, and very good afternoon to all students. This topic, the idea of cultural nationalism and reading or remembering Vivekananda and Aurobindo. Actually, I thought of speaking on this topic because I was teaching this paper, Indian Political Thought. And while teaching Aurobindo and Vivekananda, I found some interesting thing. What the mainstream intellectual on nationalism, somewhere they have missed that idea, right? So I'll come to that. So what I have thought is that I will tell you that why we discuss on nationalism today, then what is nationalism, then whether nation is past or nationalism is past, then why the John Gottfried von Herder, he's a German nationalist of 18th century, and he's an important scholar on cultural nationalism, and why he said that cultural nation is the true basis of a community and identity. And then we will discuss that how nationalism is political in European context, and how nationalism is both political and cultural in Indian context. And after that, I will jump to the ideas given by Vivekananda and Aurobindo. And then I think some thought-provoking things may or questions may arise in our mind, and let us think over those questions and let us discuss at the end. And today, why we discuss about nationalism, it's because there is a kind of fear, right? One group is blaming the other group that if you are not thinking or speaking like us, then you are anti-national, as if I represent the nation and as if you do not represent the nation, right? And they think that there is an influence of other culture. Other culture has invaded the country like India, and religious hostility. There is a religious hostility towards Indian tradition. There is serious attempt to replace it by the foreign religion or foreign political philosophy, and there is a continued effect on our cultural heritage, political. There is a negative effect on the political stability of the India and the national security and communal harmony. So there is a threat to cultural heritage, political stability, national security, and cultural harmony. And on the other side, if you see, all these sedition charges has been dismissed by the Supreme Court. So we can see how nation is being used from both the side, that I am national and you are not, right? So I think we need to understand then what is nationalism, what is a nation, and whether nation creates the feeling of nationalism or nationalism produces the concept of nation. So what is nationalism? Nationalism is nothing but a kind of your allegiance, your identification with the nation, right? So why you identify yourself with the nation? Is it for political reason or is it for cultural reason, right? In Europe, the identification of the nation is more political than cultural, and in India, the identification of individual with the nation is more cultural than political. So people like Anthony Smith, he has had a great influence on the field of cultural nationalism. For him, all nationalism has a cultural dimension. So it will be wrong to say that European nationalism is purely political, it is not cultural. It will be wrong to say that. We can say that it is more political than cultural, and Indian nationalism is more cultural than political. Now, the concept nation and nationalism, Dattatreya, he is the General Secretary of Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangha. In a talk, he said that nation has existed from the time immemorial, from the ancient time, and nationalism is a modern origin. Nationalism is a modern origin. It is also said by Ernest Gellner. He said that nationalism is a function of modernity. So nationalism is a product, but not the producer of the modernity, right? And today, the concept nation state, it has come after this concept of nationalism. So difference between the nation state and nation is very crucial to understand, and that when we talk about nation state, it means we have common currency, common military, we have political sovereignty, we have a common administrative setup. So if these three things are there, then we can say that it is a nation state. Then what is a nation? A nation is also having the three things. For example, first, the nation must have a land, the nation must have people, and nation must have a culture, right? Now, what is culture or values? Culture means it's a kind of aspiration, it's a kind of dream. You can say that there is spirituality, where you have a kind of feelings, right, towards your folk culture. There is common mythology, there is common sentiment, there is a national history, right? So culture means all these things. Now the point is that India, some Marxist and leftist intellectual, they said that India is a multinational state, right? We know that multiculturalism, because there are different cultures, but for left, they call it is a multinational state because they think that every culture is a nation, and because they have the land, they have the people, and they have the culture. Now the problem is here, that take for the example of India. Now India has multiculture, right? So each culture has its land, people, and a culture, right? And can we think that India, as a whole, is having a is India as a whole is also having a land, is also having people, is also having a culture, right? So India as a whole is also a nation, and if you define nation by these three features, then there are also multi-nation within the India, right? For example, how you identify yourself. Suppose you are within India, then you say that I am a Odia, or I am a Bengali, or I am a Bihari. Suppose you are going outside the India, then you say that I am an Indian, because I represent the values of India. I believe the Indian culture, and my thinking pattern, my fooding habit, and everything, I am an Indian, and we very easily identified ourselves with an Indian outside the India, right? Why I am saying, because for left, there are different culture, different cultural group. For left, different cultural group, they are a different nation. But for Aurobindo and for Vivekananda, they were not thinking in those terms. They were thinking that India is a nation. India, there is, India as a nation, and this is Indian nationalism. This is not, multinationalism within the India, right? And Dattatreya, I just said Dattatreya, he is the General Secretary of Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangha, and for him, he was saying that India as a whole is a nation, right? And in fact, he distinguishes between two categories. One is one nation by many states, and one state by many nations. And for him, he was saying that India is one nation by many states. And for left, He's just opposing to the left. For the left, India is one state by many nations, and left, they don't accept that India is the nation, or for them maybe a nation, India as a nation is without the nationalism, because there is no oneness in India. You can find there are multiple nationality, and they don't accept India as a nation, right? But Dattatreya, in his talk, he has said that India as a nation, because there is a kind of what I will say, Ram. He has given the example. Ram has born in Ajodhya, but there is the temple of Rameshwaram in the south, and he has also given how Krishna has traveled from Manipur to Dwarika, from east to the west. And there is another example he has given, that Lord Shiva is staying in the Himalaya, and most of the South Indians are the Shiva Bhakta, right? So from these three examples, he just tried to give a sense that how India is one, how India is there is a common culture, there is a common history, there is a common sentiment, there is a common mythology, right? Let's take the example. Ramayana, right? And in South, people worship Ravana, right? And in North, people worship Ram, and both Ram and Ravana are the character of Ramayana, right? So Ramayana is the common mythology. It connects North India with the South India. So from his talk, one can get the sense that India is also a nation, but there are also different cultural groups. They also have the similar characteristics of nationalism with them, right? But nationalism, as I told, nationalism basically it is a modern concept. Nationalism is the function of modernity, and some historian argues that nationalism has produced the nation, not the other way around, right? But for Ernest Gellner, he said that nationalism is a product, not the producer of the modernity. Nationalism is a product, not the producer of modernity. He classified history into three categories. There are three stages of human history, right? One is the hunting stage, another is the agrarian stage, then is the industrial stage. And for him, nationalism has emerged with the transition of society from feudalism to capitalism, right? So when society was moving from feudalism towards the capitalism, at that transition, or at that phase, the concept nationalism emerged. So nationalism as a political doctrine, it emerged, or it originated in the modern Europe. Then it started spreading to the rest of the world in different periods, and it was exported to the third world countries during the colonial period. In Europe, nationalism was aimed at establishing a modern sovereign state following one nation, one state dictum. But in multicultural countries like India, there are several multicultural countries. In multicultural countries, at macro level, nationalism was seen as an anti-colonial political consciousness striving to liberate the country from the foreign rule and establishing a sovereign state. And at a micro level, it was perceived as a form of cultural consciousness seeking to protect the distinct cultural community. The macro level represents the political nationalism, and the micro level represents the cultural nationalism. Now the concept nation is central to all forms of nationalism. In some cases, national consciousness arises from the pre-existent nation, and in other it may lead towards the construction of the nation. In the context of Europe, nation as a concept, it was not existing prior to the concept of nationalism. So first the concept of nationalism emerged in the context of Europe, then the nationalism tried to define the concept of nation. But in Indian society, national consciousness or the nationalism arises from the pre-existent nation. So the concept nation was there in Indian context prior to the emergence of nationalism, right? So as I mentioned, political nationalism and the cultural nationalism. Now, what is political nationalism? Now, nationalism that has led towards the construction of the nation state based on the shared colonial experience and geopolitical entity is called the political nationalism. I'm repeating. So what is political nationalism? In political nationalism, nationalism has led towards the construction of the nation state based on the shared colonial experience and geopolitical unity. And in political nationalism, there are three features mainly. So first is the sovereignty, second is the common citizenship, third is the common legal administrative system. So from the in a multicultural country, from at the micro level, the nationalism is called the political nationalism. And in cultural nationalism, nationalism arises from the pre-existent nation based on cultural, linguistic, and territorial identity. And the characteristic of cultural nationalism is that first is the cultural homogeneity, second shared history, and third distinct language, right? So this is okay. So this is the nationalism in a multicultural state, right? And unlike nationalism in Europe, Indian nationalism was not emerged from the industrialization to capture the political power. It emerged from the fighting against colonialism and from cultural framework of multinational structure. So in Europe, the nationalism it emerged from the Industrial Revolution, right? And the main goal of nationalism in Europe was to capture the state power. But in India, the concept nationalism, it emerged fighting against against the colonizer, right? And it also emerged from the cultural framework of multinational multinational structure, right? So like colonial experience elsewhere in India, British carved out administrative provinces which did not match with physical distribution of match with physical distribution of I'm just give me 2 minutes. I didn't read it. Okay, so like colonial experience elsewhere, in India, British carved out administrative provinces which did not match with the physical distribution of nationalities and their socio-cultural affiliation. So several nationalities were juxtaposed in one province, one provincial unit. For example, the Bengal presidency have different nationalities like the Bengali, the Odia, Assamese, Maithili, Bhojpuri. So all these nationalities were part of Bengal presidency. And Madras presidency has different nationalities like Tamil, Telugu, Malayalis, Kannadis. The Bombay presidency, they have Marathas, Gujaratis, Kannadis, right? So all these nationality. So I am using nationality because these people they belonging to a particular language, and they belong to a particular culture also, right? So all these in Bengal presidency, Bengali, they are the mainstream nationalities, and Odia, Assami, Maithili, Bhojpuri, they are the smaller nationality. In Madras presidency, Tamils are the mainstream nationality. Telugu, Malayalis, Kannadis, they are the smaller nationalities. In Bombay presidency, Marathas, they are the mainstream nationalities. Gujarati, Kannadis, they are the smaller nationalities. Now these smaller nationalities in various provinces was reduced into the minority position, and this has resulted towards tension and conflict between majority and minority within the province. And the reason for this conflict was actually the mainstream nationalities try to dominate over the smaller nationalities, and on the other hand, the smaller nationalities started fearing of losing their identity. Now these are the two reasons within these provinces. There is a kind of conflict between the mainstream nationality and smaller nationality. The mainstream nationalities whose culture and territory were not fragmented, they become the majority and dominant nationality under the favorable colonial condition. The language and culture of the fragmented nationality, or we call it as a smaller nationality, they faced serious threat of cultural subordination and material deprivation, which forced them to demand separate province. So Odia, Assamese, Maithili, Bhojpuri, so they faced they faced the cultural subordination and material deprivation within the Bengal presidency, because in Bengal presidency, Bengalis are the mainstream nationalities, and they were trying to have dominance over the smaller nationalities, right? So the language and culture of fragmented nationality faced serious threat of cultural subordination and material deprivation, which forced them to demand the separate province. Now this gave rise to the several cultural nationalism in colonial India. So right now India has not got the independence. So I'm talking about before independence. Now this gave rise to the several cultural nationalism in colonial India, and these cultural nationalism were fighting for their cultural nationalism. I mean Odia nationalism, it was fighting for its own identity. At the same time, Odia nationalism was also fighting for the political nationalism towards the liberation of the nation. So all these, smaller nationality, what is also called the fragmented nationality. So their fighting was actually twofold. So one fighting was to maintain their identity within the province, right, and to protect themselves from the cultural subordination and material deprivation. That is one fight. And the other fight was that the political liberation of India, or the political nationalism towards the liberation of the of India. So this was the situation before India got the independence, or during the colonial time. And in the post-independent India, with the establishment of federal polity, parliamentary democracy, constitutionalism, cultural pluralism, cultural nationalism, in the post-independent India, with the establishment of federal polity, parliamentary democracy, constitutionalism, cultural pluralism, the concept cultural nationalism was strengthened. Indian constitution legitimized the cultural pluralism by listing, recognizing 14 major languages, and subsequently it became 22 major languages. Now in this changed atmosphere, people became conscious of their linguistic, cultural and rational identity. Now today you can see all these small national what is called it smaller nationality. All these smaller nationality during the colonial period, today they constitute minority, and all those mainstream nationality today they constitute the majority group today. And today you can see from the infighting between the majority community or majority culture and minority culture, that the minority culture they have a different notion of nationalism, and the majority culture is having a different notion of nationalism. For minority culture, the nationalism is giving importance to the concept of diversity in unity, and for the majority community, the concept of nationalism is based on giving importance on unity of diversity, right? So it's the fighting between the diversity of unity and unity of diversity. So the difference is that for the minority communities, so for them, I think they are saying that we are one, but we are diverse. So the state must give importance to our diversity first, so that the unity can be maintained, right? So this is the version of nationalism of minority community. And for the majority community, the version of nationalism is that for them unity of diversity is the expression of nationalism. For example, they say that okay, we are diverse, but we are one. We must realize our oneness, right? So this is the difference of understanding on nationality between the minority community and the majority community, right? So what is the importance of Vivekananda and Aurobindo is that if you understand their philosophy, then you can get a sense that for them, or in their philosophy, they placed political nationalism, right, within the concept of cultural nationalism, or in other words, the political nationalism is embedded in the concept of cultural nationalism if one reads Vivekananda and Aurobindo. And for Aurobindo, for Vivekananda, cultural nationalism is all about, he has given importance on decolonizing the mind, right? So, a true nationalist, first of all, he has to decolonize his mind, right? Then only he can be a true nationalist. And for Aurobindo, for him, nationalism means doing a spiritual revolution, right? So there are many commonalities between Vivekananda and Aurobindo. So let us understand what is that decolonizing mind, right? For Vivekananda, Vivekananda knew that that Indian life is a diverse life, right? So it is a diverse on many accounts, but there is a underlying oneness of human problems, right? Such as poverty, disability, disease. So whether you are a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, whether you are North Indian or South Indian, or whether you belong to any state, you are subjected to all these problems. So these problems are poverty, disability, and disease. And all these problems are entangled with ignorance and superstition, right? So human problems are entangled with ignorance and superstition that had gripped the popular mind. So this is the starting point of Vivekananda. Now, in order to be free from all these problems, to Vivekananda, the countryman needs the gift of knowledge. So knowledge is the solution to the human problem, right? Gift of knowledge in both its secular and spiritual form. While secular knowledge enhances the knowledge of the phenomenal world, the spiritual awakening is to restore self-belief in man and made him aware of his potential greatness. So knowledge is the solution to all problems according to Vivekananda. And what kind of knowledge? Secular knowledge and spiritual knowledge. What is the function of secular knowledge? The function of secular knowledge is to enhance the knowledge of phenomenal world. I mean, knowledge of outside. And what is the spiritual knowledge? Knowledge of inside. So there are two worlds, outside world and inside world. So spiritual awakening is to restore self-belief in man and made him aware of his potential greatness. So to him, spiritual knowledge must accompany with secular thought and secular work. So only concentrating on inner self will not be fruitful, right? So secular knowledge must accompany spiritual knowledge must accompany with secular thought and work. And somewhere he said that the spiritual talk could not be palatable to the empty stomach, right? So if a person who is suffering from hunger, he may not understand spiritualism, right? So hence the solution is the self-knowledge along with empathetic understanding of the other who is surrounded by different problems. So what is the solution? Solution is that you must connect yourself with the other, right? So there is a other inside you, and that other is suffering, and the other is surrounded by many problems, right? And Swami Vivekananda, he focused on two critical and interrelated issues, which is related to all problems of India at that time. And what are those two critical issues? One is the exploitative nature of British colonial rule, and second is the several social ills endemic to indigenous society. Now, because of these two issues, there is suffering, and individuals are surrounded by different problems. So regarding the past, that exploitative nature of the British colonial rule, Vivekananda, for him, colonial rule had hypnotized the Indian mind and taken away from it all the vestiges of dignity and self-belief, right? So it is because of this, British colonial rule, right? It is because of that, there is the dignity and the self-belief, was taken away from, from Indians, right? Hence, the mind needs to be decolonized first before it could be made more responsive to the freedom, right? So both Vivekananda and Aurobindo, and they both, the concept of nationalism of both was actually the time in which both of them have had given the concept of nationalism. It was the time when the Britishers were ruling over the India, right? And we all know that how the Britishers used divide and rule, and how they used Indians against the India. So that's why Vivekananda is saying that this British rule or colonial rule has severely damaged the self-belief and dignity of Indians, and the kind of education they were providing to the Indians. Ultimately, Indians were becoming the slave of their of their rule. So hence Vivekananda was saying that the mind needs to be decolonized fast before it could be made more responsive to freedom. For a meaningful political revolution, the countrymen must be prepared to decolonize their mind. Though Swami was away from the organized politics, yet he was against the mendicancy of the early Congress, because he was against the mendicancy of the early Congress because of it was neither declaring India to be free nor taking any step awakening the masses towards decolonizing the mind. So Vivekananda was very much critical about the function of the Congress. So early Congress, right? The early Congress was neither it was declaring India to be free, nor it was taking any step towards the decolonization of mind. So to him, to Vivekananda, decolonizing mind requires an understanding of the difference between westernization and modernizing along Western line, right? So the understanding of these two variants, westernization on one hand and modernizing along Western line, the difference between these two, if anyone can differentiate between these two, then he is having a mind that is decolonized, right? So to him, the decolonizing mind requires an understanding of difference between westernization and modernizing along Western line. Such distinction could not sharply enforced in India, as the ruling class was alien and had no interest of the country at the heart. So Britishers were ruling; they were the alien to this country, and they did not do anything so that the Indians can differentiate between westernization and modernizing along Western line. So modernizing along Western line, it means using material and scientific aspect of modernity, best exemplified by the West, and continuation of Indian tradition. So this is modernization, modernizing along Western line, right? So British, colonialism was in favor of, Westernization. So it was not at all favorable towards the constructive borrowing of Western ideals. It was more so because of its parasitic nature and functioning. No good can be done when the idea is blood sucking. So British never made India their home or identified themselves with India. So Vivekananda knew that. So as long as this British rule is there, they will do all possible things to damage the dignity and self-belief of Indians, right? So for centuries, it is due to this inhuman exploitation by the Britisher, India was isolated and unconcerned to the phenomenal development taking place in the rest of the world. And as a result, social ills attached to Indian society. And all these social ills had transformed individual from indivisible towards divisible, right? So this is a very crucial sentence. So it is due to the exploitation of the Britishers, all social ills emerged. And all these social ills transformed the character of individual from indivisible towards the divisible. Hence, the solution lies is the broadening the social base of nationalism by creating a better bond of empathy between classes. Now, this bonding together as a nation would more effectively come through a sensitive handling of everyday social problem. To Vivekananda, the social inequality is the root cause of everyday social problem. Until and unless it is the social inequality is removed, political freedom is not possible. Now, in his speech and writing, Vivekananda came down heavily on the parasitic, Brahminical society for the prevalence of social inequality. He was also unhappy with the social reformer at his time because it was essentially an upper caste or class affair. Secondly, he was critical about the methods used by the reformers. Their method was influenced by the West, who have little understanding on Indian ethos. By doing so, the reformers were destroying Indian culture rather than constructively building it. So, what is significant in Vivekananda's concept of nationalism is that all the problems is because of social evils or social ills. And who are responsible for these social ills or evils? First, the Britishers, I mean the colonizer, their exploitative, their exploitation, and second, Vivekananda is saying the social inequality is because of the parasitic Brahminical society for the prevalence of the social inequality. So first is blaming the exploitative nature of the Britisher or colonizer. Second is attacking the Brahminical society because Brahminical society is responsible for the maintenance of that social inequality. And third, Vivekananda is coming heavily on the social reformer, and he was unhappy on the social reformer because all these reformers, they were belonging to the higher caste or higher class, and these reformers were influenced by the West, right, and who have little understanding on Indian ethos, right. And all the reformers, instead of constructively building the society, they were actually destroying the Indian culture, right. So this is the understanding of Vivekananda, and that's why he wants that before India gets political freedom, Indians must decolonize their mind. So for Vivekananda, cultural nationalism is all about decolonizing the mind. Until and unless mind is not decolonized and you get the political freedom, then you will be under the influence of the colonizer. And today also we are seeing our rulers, those who are ruling our country, they are under the influence of the West, right? And many many rules and regulation, many constitutional rules and regulation, they all are impacted by the sentiments of colonizer, right? So there is a colonial impact over our rules and regulation even today. So this is Vivekananda. Coming to the Aurobindo, as I mentioned before, that for Aurobindo, cultural nationalism is all about doing a spiritual revolution, right? For Aurobindo, for him, Western civilization is unsuited to India because it is engaged with the material pursuit only without any spirituality. So Aurobindo was giving importance to the spirituality. So material progress of the West has limited their vision to the visible and material. So what is visible, the West understand it and accept it, and what is not visible, the West doesn't accept it and doesn't try to understand it. So India would sterile itself if it goes on importing and imitating from the West. When Western civilization is applied to India, instead of welding the country together, it will only give rise to the competitive selfishness. And today we are experiencing what the Aurobindo has said at that time, right? So if we blindly apply the Western civilization, Western thought on India, then the country will be fragmented, and the competitive selfishness it will rise. So hence the function of India is to spread a perennial source of light of spirituality and Vedantic wisdom to the world, along with creating material wealth. So Aurobindo is not negating material wealth, but he is prioritizing the spiritual development or spirituality. It can only do so when India will return to her eternal self, and it is essential to preserve its individuality, splendor, greatness, and wisdom. Hence, India needs spiritual revolution along with political revolution. So Aurobindo has mixed political nationalism with spiritual nationalism, right? So for him, India needs spiritual revolution along with political revolution. So political revolution without spiritual revolution, it may not produce the right result. Now for spiritual revolution, what is required? For spiritual revolution, retrieving its spiritual majesty is needed, and which is possible fast, which is possible through recovering the patrimony of forefather. Second, it is through the Aryan thought, Aryan discipline, Aryan character, and Aryan life. And third, recovering Gita, Vedanta, and Yoga. So all these three are required for the spiritual revolution. And all these are normatively there in Sanatana Dharma, according to the Aurobindo. Hence, it is worthy to be a world religion. So instead, India follows the world. India can take the leadership of the entire world. So it is worthy to be a world religion. It has the power to regenerate India. Now, in the regenerated India, freedom will be followed by religion and culture. Freedom will be followed by religion and culture, and it doesn't come through imitation, but through returning to the roots. Here, Aurobindo is saying the language of revivalism and accusing the Britishers of creating policy that encouraged cultural amnesia in the people of the nation in order to produce a body of brave, loyal, and conservative citizens educated with the aim of working for British Empire rather than revolting against it. Right? If you read the life and career of Aurobindo, then you will find initially the father of Aurobindo, he tried to he did not want he did not want any influence of in India on his son, and that's why he sent his son to west for the education. But there at the youth age, Aurobindo realized that it is his duty to fight, to have revolution against the West rather than becoming a person of the West, right? So Aurobindo is saying the language of revivalism. He is accusing the Britisher of creating a policy that encouraged the cultural amnesia in the people of the nation in order to produce a brave, loyal, and conservative citizens educated with the aim of working for the British Empire. That is what his father wanted Aurobindo to be. Now, when Aurobindo talks about the cultural and religious, emancipation of the nation, he focuses on Hindu religion, because for him, Hinduism constitutes the soul of India, right? But Aurobindo's nationalism was not exclusive; it was inclusive. It has the space for all classes and creeds. Aurobindo perceives India not as a geographical entity, rather it is a living divine entity. For him, it was neither originated in operation nor would die in suppression. It is the incarnation, it is an avatar, it is an eternal force, a divinely appointed Shakti who has to perform God-given work and would immerse into the universal energy after the performance of its divinely ordained task. Aurobindo's characterization of nationalism was more metaphysical than political. For him, enslavement is the denial of the creation of Almighty, and therefore working for liberation from the clutches of colonial rule is not less than serving the God. Hence, all nationalists must have faith in God and must remember that she or he is discharging God's appointed mission. Since it is a divine work, a true nationalist should be fearless from the persecution of any kind and should always be ready to sacrifice everything for the nation. Hence, nationalism is not political program, rather a passionate aspiration for the realization of divine unity in the nation, where all components of individual, despite variations and inequality, get dissolved and everyone feels the spirit of oneness. It means nationalism doesn't discount inequality but has the capacity to dissolve the difference out of them. For Aurobindo, social and economic equality does not give rise to nationalism, rather it is vice versa. Aurobindo does not accept that Congress made Indian nationalism possible of its effort. For him, it was bound to take the shape irrespective of party because it was destined by the divine force and took shape in the mind of common men. So nation cannot work for greater cause of humanity if it is deprived from the political freedom. Now I just prepared and I just read it out, right? For Aurobindo, what is important that nationalism must have a spiritual component if it will produce the right political consequences. So nationalism is both cultural and nationalism is also political, right? So when I'm saying nationalism is political, it means the creation of a sound or a just state. And when I'm saying nationalism is cultural, then it means the allegiance of individuals towards the state must be fair, right? So if individuals are corrupt, then state cannot be a just state. And if the state is unjust, then it cannot produce fair individual or fair citizens. So both Vivekananda and Aurobindo, they try to combine political nationalism and cultural nationalism through the concept of spirituality, right? And Vivekananda, for Vivekananda, it was all about decolonizing mind, and you can decolonize your mind only when you understand the ethos of India. And to understand the ethos of India, you need to understand the spirituality. You need to understand there are many things that human cannot perceive. And the kind of, today we are saying that the major problem for, nationalism and why there is fighting between the majority community and minority community on the concept of nationalism is because of a kind of ignorance, I will say, after reading the Vivekananda and Aurobindo. But for them, they think that inequality is the main reason, right? So in the name of assimilation, the majority communities tries to dominate over the minority community in the name of nationalism by sustaining the inequality. And that's why the minority community has problem with the majority community. But here, Vivekananda and Aurobindo, they emphasize that as long as individuals are divisible, as long as individuals are divisible, it may not produce the correct nationalism, either in political sense or in the cultural sense, right? So individuals must realize that they are indivisible, they cannot be divided, they are part of a larger group, right? So only when you understand you are part of the larger group and you have responsibility towards that larger group, then only it can produce a just state and a just individual and a just relationship between the individual and the state, right? And if you are a just individual, then you will be just to your cultural community, you will be just to your state, and you will also identify yourself that your identity, for example, my identity, I am a Odia, right? But I should not reduce my identity to Odia. I am also Indian. I am part of the world. I am also the part of the living beings, right? So a just man always thinks like this, and always behave like that. So as long as you there is the spiritualism is the part of Indian philosophy or Indian tradition. So as long as you don't understand or recognize that spiritualism, then as long as you are not accepting or recognizing, then it may not produce the political nationalism, and it may not produce the cultural nationalism. So what is interesting about Aurobindo and Vivekananda is that their cultural nationalism is also consisting of political nationalism, right? So in Europe, the the nationalism is political, and in India the nationalism is both political and cultural. So this is the difference between Europe and the multicultural country like India. This is the difference in the understanding of nationalism. So I'm stopping here. I will take some of the questions so that I can answer it. It will be more, it will come more clearly. So thank you.
Okay. So Himanshu, are you done with your lecture?
Yes.
Okay. So now I request all the students, my colleagues. I can see Professor Guru is also there. So I request everyone to kindly.
Namaskar, sir.
Yes. Yeah, namaskar. So I request everyone to kindly post their questions in the chat box, or else you can directly ask the question to the speaker. Professor Guru, would you like to speak a few words? Maybe you can share your ideas or opinions. Sir, you please unmute yourself. Sir, please unmute yourself. We cannot hear you.
Yes. A few questions to Himanshu, specifically for my personal awareness. What is cultural nationalism? What is spiritual nationalism? What is the basis of spiritual and cultural nationalism? How about spiritual and cultural nationalism would promote political nationalism? These are some of the essential links I fail to understand in the discussions.
Okay, sir, 1 second. What is cultural nationalism?
Yes.
What is spiritual nationalism then?
What is the basis of spiritual nationalism and cultural nationalism? The foundation. And how both spiritual and cultural nationalism would promote political nationalism? What is the link?
Okay.
I've listened to a few terms, but the meaning of the terms are not clear to me. I need some clarification.
Yeah. I would like to ask all the students to express their views on the lecture, or they can ask questions, clarifications, comments. They can directly ask. Or else, Dr. Himanshu, why don't you respond to Professor Guru so that in the meantime we can have two questions collected from
Yes. So let me add, I mean, you can, okay, there are political nationalism. I mean, there are three terms: cultural nationalism, spiritual nationalism, and political nationalism. And the question is that what is cultural nationalism, what is spiritual nationalism, what is the basis of both, and how it contributes to the political
nationalism. Yes.
The cultural nationalism is all about, and what is nationalism? Nationalism is all about identifying yourself with the nation, with the state, or not state actually, with the nation. Nation, there is difference between nation and nation state also. I'll come to that.
Yes. So what is cultural nationalism?
I'm telling you, sir. I'm telling you. So when you identify yourself with a nation, due to,
How do you define a nation?
how to, okay, I'm answering.
Yes.
A nation is one.
These are fundamental questions.
Okay, I'm answering.
The students must know it.
I'm answering you, sir.
Yes.
So a nation is one which is having, people, land, and a culture or values. That is a nation, and that's why Anthony Smith, for him, all nationalism has a cultural dimension, right? So when you are talking about nation,
Yes.
then it must have a culture. And
No,
when
first explain what is a nation. There is the problem.
a nation is
Yes.
a feeling. A nation is a I said that nation constitute land, people, and culture.
May
Right.
not be. May not be.
Then
Be
what?
specific. How do you define it?
I mean, that's how it is defined.
Yes.
Actually,
Then only you can go. Then you can understand nationalism.
people have defined nation if it has three, criteria or characteristics.
Yes.
A nation is one which is that consisting of people, that consisting of people, land. There must be a land, there must be people, and there must be culture. People identified with that land through the culture. People identified with a land through the culture or values. If these three things are there, then you can call that is a nation.
Culture will come next. How a
People-
nation is formed? How a nation is formed? What are the defining attributes of a nation?
These three things are the defining characteristic of a nation.
No. Automatically, the nation would not be built up.
Okay, what you think actually? No problem. I mean, what I have read, nation is defined by these three, characteristics. And
Yes.
And nation state is defined by if there is common currency, common military.
No.
If there
That relate to state.
Now there is nation
When
state.
you say military, currency, etc., it relates to state.
It is a nation state. I mean, those who
Yes.
those who have worked on nationalism.
When nation and state would be combined together, it is called a nation state. Subsequent development. But first, a nation is formed. And how? What it is there for? How we understand the concept of a nation first? It is the commonality of a group of people. Oneness among them. Regarding what? Regarding a common belief systems and way of life.
Commonalities, yes.
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 A common belief system.
Hmm.
And it is that belief system and common way of life which gives rise to a culture, a definite pattern of a culture for that.
Hmm.
So it is cultural nationalism. First, nation is formed. People intend to live together, cooperate with one another, work together, share their ideas with one another, form a common belief system, have a common way of life. Oneness develops, therefore, among them. Then they relate it to the territory, then they relate it to the state or political authorities, etc. That will come later. First, a nation is formed. The propensity of a set of individuals to live together, to work together, to share with one another regarding a common pattern of life, a common belief systems. And it is their common way of living together, a common belief system which gives rise to a common culture for them. So we have Odia nationalism, when Odia people live together, stay together, cooperate with one another, identify themselves with Odia language, Odia nationalism, Tamil nationalism, French nationalism, German nationalism.
Yes.
So they have a common language, common way of life, a common identity born out of their commonness, maybe physiological features, psychological attitudes and propensities, a common race, a common ethnicity. They have common features, physiological features. The Chinese nation, common features, physiological features. Dravidian, common features. Aryans, common features. Mongolians, common features. Nordic race, common features. Anglo-Saxons, common features. So every group of people with a distinct race, ethnicity, language, religion, way of life, a common belief system, when they live together, share their ideas with one another, bound together by common division of labor, a nation emerges.
Basically, this is a commonality.
Yes, commonality.
This is a commonality.
Yes.
So, that is
That is my understanding. Yes. You may
Hmm.
differ, or other listeners may differ.
Hmm.
This is my understanding of the term nation. So what is cultural nationalism for India? You're speaking in Indian context.
The cultural nationalism in India is actually twofold, right?
Yes.
At the micro, I mean, twofold. Twofold means there is a political nationalism, there is a cultural nationalism.
No, political nationalism will come later. First, cultural nationalism. Political nationalism will come much later, when the people of a particular culture decide to live on a common territory. A state would be formed. Then only political nationalism would emerge. First state, and then nation state. What is that nation state concept of nation state? It is political nationalism. And that concept of political nationalism in Europe emerged from Machiavelli onwards. Machiavelli is the first political thinker of the world, who formed the idea of a nation state in 15th, 16th century. So political nationalism is a much later phenomenon. Before political nationalism, there prevailed cultural nationalism. As French nationalism, British nationalism, Indian nationalism, Chinese nationalism, all these are cultural nationalisms. They have a distinct culture of their own.
Sir, what I think that
Yes.
when I identified myself with the Indian state, that I am a citizen of India,
Yes.
then it is called my political.
State will come much later. First, you identify with your own community of persons.
Then who am I?
You are basically, who are you? Member of your family, member of your society.
Multiple identities I
Yes.
have, right?
Member of your religion, member of your race, member of your caste.
Yes.
That is your first identity. Political nationalism would come later when you become a citizen. Concept of citizenship emerged much later, when the state is formed and you render allegiance to the state. Then only political nationalism would emerge. First, cultural nationalism, you identify yourself. with your community first in terms of language, religion, caste, tribe, race, ethnicity, have a common way of life, have a common belief system. You share in a particular religion that pertains to your own community. Culturally, I am a Hindu.
Professor Guru,
Right.
Professor Guru, I have a small intervention.
Yes.
Sir, actually, this is a very interesting conversation between you and Dr. Himanshu. I'm so glad that our students are benefited through these kind of interactions. But I was just wondering, I don't know whether I'm right or wrong, but despite my limited knowledge on this subject, I just had a small query and I thought I should seek clarification from your conversation. Maybe you or Himanshu, anyone who can
Yes. Yes.
clarify my doubt. See, when we say that cultural nationalism precedes political nationalism, but see, we see examples of emergence of modern nation states, absolutely modern nation states. For example, a state like Singapore, okay,
Yes.
where no ancient history, or like India, China, or something like that. So, where do we place our arguments when we think about nations like Singapore? So, how do you respond to?
There are different communities of people lived in Singapore. In terms of religion, Hindus were there, Muslims were there,
No,
Christians were
when it
there.
comes to allegiance to one
Yes.
particular culture,
And they decided to have a common political existence, and therefore a state was created.
uh,
So cultural nationalism first, it precedes political nationalism, not the vice versa.
no, I'm not saying vice versa, but I'm just
Yes.
placing a query how to place
Similarly, look at United States of America. There are 15 different states with different communities and cultural groups of people there.
Yeah.
They had their distinct cultural identities and nationalisms. Later on, they decided form the United States of America. They have a common culture now.
But sir, the literature on cultural nationalism speaks something different.
Yes.
It speaks that in Europe, nationalism emerged as a political doctrine. I think they don't talk about cultural nationalism.
They talk about, or they specifically have in mind political nationalism, concept of nation state.
They don't talk about cultural nationalism.
Yes.
Right. So, I mean, what you were saying, that is applicable to India only or in third world countries, right?
Every group of people which is a commonality in terms of their belief systems,
no,
way of life, they have a culture of their own.
Sir, what you are saying that
there is Sambalpuri
be,
culture here, there is Barampuri culture there, there is coastal culture in Kattagadam, Bhubaneswar and Puri. We have different cultures. But we are one as Odias, politically. And we are one as Odia, specifically in terms of religion, because we believe in Jagannath. It is religion which binds together culturally and makes us proud to call ourselves as Odias.
I think what you are saying, the literature is not saying that. What you are saying, that is applicable to India.
No,
even in India,
the literature, they have conceptualized in terms of Western experiences. Even in West, what we find, every group of people in the West, in France, there are different communities there. In Italy, different communities there. Everywhere there are groups of people in terms of race and ethnicity. In terms of language, there is no commonality of language anywhere. Every group of people has a distinct language. Look at in United States at present. I had been twice to USA. A number of people that speak French. A number of people speak German, different areas. Italians speak.
Sir, excuse me, sir. Sir, in fact, beyond any doubt, we can say that culturalism, whether it is in case of Western world or in case of Eastern world, no matter, but ultimately, beyond any doubt, we can say cultural nationalism is a road to political nationalism.
Certainly, for
Himanshu
past,
sir,
past
Himanshu
cultural
sir,
identity,
I beg
there
your
must
pardon. Sir,
be.
I beg your pardon. Sir, I
Yes,
beg your pardon. Himanshu sir said that whatever Guru sir said is not applicable in India, but sir, in Western world also. First
yes,
of all, they had developed their cultural nationalism. Then
yes,
political nationalism came. I mean, they gained political nationalism lately. What in
yes,
case of India? First of all, nationalism, cultural nationalism constituted the very base of nationalism in India. Then,
definitely, definitely.
political nationalism came into being.
Yes, very beautifully analyzed and understood.
No, sir, I think this, what you are saying, that is a very commonsensical understanding. If you will go to the literature, and every literature is a product of that time and space.
In the West, they speak of nationalism, especially in political context. That is the problem.
No, I mean,
They speak in view of the concept of nation state.
Okay, so I think
Sir,
Dr.
again, sir, please, sir.
Yeah.
Let me grant us a few minutes. Sir, listen. I have another important thing to share with you all. Listen, the people of Western world, they are saying or they are claiming themselves superior, not in terms of their political entity, but because of their cultural superiority. They feel they are culturally superior as compared to us. So they feel proud of themselves having a very important cultural nationalism with them, and because of their cultural superiority, they try to spread over their influence all over the world. And we feel ourselves depressed because we don't have any cultural nationalism. I mean, to strong cultural nationalism.
अरे more battery sorry I would like to have discussions and
no,
dialogues.
no, I mean,
My battery is
let
running out.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have
yeah,
to
yeah.
put it in
I
on
think, I
charge.
think, I think many of the students, we had a wonderful conversation between Professor Guru and Dr. Nayak and Dr. Mishra. But I think some of our students are also very keen to ask few questions to Dr. Himanshu. And some of them are actually, they have posted it in chat box. Probably, Himanshu, if you can just help yourself and read. You can start with Pradeep Kumar Pradhan.
okay,
Yes,
let
yes,
me,
yes.
let me,
Himanshu, listen to me. You explain the meaning of these terms so that it will be communicable to the students. Especially the doubts which I raise are the common doubts
Yeah.
that emerges in the mind of every student. What do we mean by nationalism? What is cultural nationalism? What is political nationalism? What is spiritual nationalism? And what is the base? Then only you can understand cultural nationalism in Indian context. And you relate your discussions to India, especially to the Vedas and Vedantas, to Gita, to Upanishads, to Mahabharata, to Ramayana, which forms a common culture for the Indian people and forms social culturalism or cultural integration or cultural nationalism in India.
sir, can I speak?
Yes, yes. I'm just closing it because battery is running out. It will
Okay,
close at any time.
okay. I think what you just said, that is said by the Vivekananda and Aurobindo also, that before you talk about, political, you have to understand your cultural aspect, right? And spiritualism is the core part of that culture. So until and unless you understand spirituality, right, who you are, what you are for, who is self, who is other, I mean, uh, how you are similar and different to other, these are the metaphysical questions. So until and unless you don't think through all these questions, you cannot understand the Indian culture. But for the West, I think the political will succeed the cultural. That is not the case in the in the West, especially Europe actually. So we cannot say out of our mind. I mean, there is a literature and we have to refer to that literature. And if you are not convinced by their literature, you can in some other platform we can sit and we can discuss why in Europe the nationalism is political than cultural. We can discuss on that, right? And so let me handle the question of the student.
The students are also waiting.
How far have we decolonized our mind? Are we modern? From Vivekananda perspective, how effective is Indian nationalism today? I think how far we have decolonized mind. I can answer it from my own understanding. So my value preposition will be there. Somewhere we have failed in decolonizing your mind, and that's why today there is a growing realization, and Professor Nivedita Menon also told that right now we are trying to re-theorizing the theory, right? So the need of the hour is that we must decolonize our mind. We must understand our own context, and we must understand the particular, I mean, Western theory, how it is relevant to the West and how it is not relevant to the East. Now, academia is concentrating on that. I mean, we have just started towards the decolonizing our mind, but much more before. Vivekananda has hinted towards that for him actually, before India got the get the political independence, first the citizens must decolonize their mind, right? And today you can see that our nation has got the I mean independence, but our mind is much more dependent on the West. Are we modern? Yes and no. I mean, we are modern from our, I will say we are externally modern, but we are not, we are internally tradition, especially, in India. From Vivekananda perspective, how effective is Indian nationalism today? Now, from Vivekananda perspective, since the decolonizing mind has not been completed, Indian nationalism is far ahead. I mean, we have not reached. I mean, we are just starting our journey to the Indian nationalism. Otherwise, you can find various nationalism. What left intellectual calls India is a multinational state, right? So Indian nationalism is not multinational state, right? Indian nationalism means Indian national state, actually one nation. So we are we just have started our journey towards that, especially from Vivekananda perspective. Then another question, sir, is the combination of both cultural and political nationalism is effective in India? Yes. I mean, political nationalism in Indian context, especially after reading Vivekananda and Aurobindo, Indian political nationalism must have a cultural nationalism first, right? So cultural nationalism means when you are identifying yourself to a nation because of its, popular ritual, tradition, legends, cultural heritage, right? Then you are, making a culture, or you are working towards cultural nationalism. So I think the combination, I mean, first the cultural nationalism should come, and then the political nationalism. So ideally, that was also suggested by Aurobindo and Vivekananda, right? But in European context, it is something different. I'm regularly saying it, but somewhere you are trying to impose the conception given by the Vivekananda and Aurobindo in the entire world actually. So it's clearly written in every literature that nationalism is a political doctrine originated in the modern Europe, right? Then it started to spill over to the rest of the world. And when nationalism, that political nationalism reached India, then the concept of nation state emerged. So this is the literature actually. But okay, you need to, one need to read the literature before applying the common sense. Is nationalism help speed up development of COVID-19? Professor Swain, can you help me to understand this question? Professor Swain, are you there?
Yes.
Yes, Keshav sir.
No. I'm speaking from Keshav sir's mobile.
Okay. Tell me, what is this question?
I don't. Which question are you reading?
Is nationalism help speed up development of COVID-19 vaccine? Okay.
I don't know what it makes, whether it makes any sense or not. You can skip that question.
Okay. Sir, each political nationalism is far better and efficient than cultural nationalism? No. Political nationalism can be better if it accompanies with cultural nationalism. Right? Until and unless you don't identify Indian nation, then Indian state cannot be strong. So the goal of political nationalism is to create a strong nation state, right? Strong nation state or strong state. State and nation state is, it is interchangeably used. Sir, how to take cultural nationalism and modernization hand in hand with the growing demand of the world? So that is what, Vivekananda said that we must follow. What was it? I'm just telling you. We must decolonizing mind means using decolonizing mind means modernizing along Western line. That is very crucial, right? So what is the modernizing along with Western line? It means we will use the material and scientific aspect of the modernity, what is best exemplified by the West, and at the same time we will continue our indigenous tradition. I think okay, what is the question? Okay, I think that's how you can go with hand in hand with the growing demand of the world. If you want to be a powerful nation in the world, then you have to go with modernity along with tradition. Both are actually necessary. We should not blindly imitate the West. Then what is the meaning of mainstream nationality and smaller nationality? So the category, the mainstream nationality and smaller nationality, it was because there were many nationality within India during the colonial period. But what the British did, now British divided whole India into different administrative province, and in different administrative provinces are created not on the basis of socio-cultural affiliation, right? For example, I told that Bengal presidency, Madras presidency, and Bombay presidency, and in these three presidency there were many nationalities or many different kinds of nationalities. For example, Bengali nationality, Odia nationality, Assami nationality. Now in Bengal presidency, the mainstream nationality is the Bengali nationality, and the rest, Odia, Assami, Maithili, Bhojpuri, they are what is called smaller nationality. So this is the difference between the mainstream nationality and smaller nationality. In which way or method we can decolonize our mind? We can decolonize our mind by differentiating between westernization and modernizing along Western line, right? So this is what suggested by Vivekananda, that once you are able to differentiate between these two, then you can understand who you are and who you are not, right? So the method to decolonize our mind is to put question to ourselves that who we are and who we are not, right? That's how you can decolonize your mind. So you have to be slightly metaphysical, then only, or you need certain kind of spirituality in order to decolonize your mind. Then Tapan is asking, why, sir, who was more spiritual and why? And how spiritual nationalism of Swami Vivekananda and Aurobindo helped to overcome a mediocre attitude of the West philosophers towards India. I mean, both Vivekananda and Aurobindo, I mean, who is more spiritual? I mean, East is more spiritual. Both Vivekananda and Aurobindo both are saying it because simple reason, West is guided by the materialism. West is guided by the materialism, and West understand, or West thinks what is visible to them, and they don't accept what is not visible. But in case of East, or especially India, our sages and our various philosophers, in Indian political thought, you can find many philosopher or thinker. They were trying to understand what is visible and what is not visible, right? So when you try to understand what is not visible, then you connect what you see and what you don't see, then there is a possibility that you become spiritual, right? So Vivekananda, he was saying that if the East will teach anything to the West, this is actually the spiritualism. The spiritualism is the way to the happiness, is way to the true freedom, and hence the materialism or materialistic orientation, it is the cause of pain, right? Or it is the source of all problem, right? So I mean, the selfless is the right way, and selfishness is the wrong way. From the West, there is a growing competitive selfishness, and today we are experiencing India. So I mean, we are giving more pain than pleasure to us, and spiritualism is the way to give more pleasure than pain. Then Pratap is asking how nationalism was different from internationalism of Swami Vivekananda and Aurobindo. I mean, I'm skipping it. I have not said on internationalism. Then Abhiram is asking, what is nationalism? Why is it compared with imagined community? Each spiritual nationalism differ from them. See, imagined community, Anderson has given that concept, and that each spiritual nationalism differ from them. I mean, spiritual nationalism, it connects individual, especially Aurobindo and Vivekananda has given spiritual nationalism in order to connect India with Bharat Mata, right? With India actually, right? So they were trying to create a national consciousness, right? So that national consciousness can be possible only when you are spiritually, developed, right? So if you think beyond of your, parochial identity, and if you connect yourself with the nation, you can do it through the spiritualism, and that's how it will strengthen the political movement against the Britisher. So I'm not answering, I don't know how to compare between this, why it is compared, with an imagined community. I'm not getting it actually. Okay, then Pradeep, sir, please, okay. Samir, what is about current political climate that has produced the discourse of anti-national in a midst, and how does it affect the very idea of cultural nationalism? See, this anti-national, I mean, all these, uh, allegation, uh, Supreme Court has, I mean, it is disproved in the Supreme Court, all the sedition charges. So why this anti-nationality is coming? Because there is a difference between the psychology of minority community and the majority community. And the majority community, they try to dominate over the minority community, taking, I mean, by using the concept of nationalism. And on the other hand, uh, the minority community is feeling that they may lose in this, they may lose the identity in the politics, in the game of politics. So that's why this, communal and anti-national both are coming in today's present politics. But then why all this claim and counter claim is happening? It is because that individual, today's individual, either from minority community or majority community, individual has become divisible. So individuals are guided by the private interest, and that's why there is claim and counter claim. The spiritualism that requires that individual should be more selfless than the selfish, and then only individuals can be indivisible. When individuals cannot be divided, at that time I think this claim and counter claim will disappear. Only when the self will incorporate the other, and the other will incorporate self will incorporate the other, then it is okay. I mean, if I incorporate you, you incorporate me, then there will be no conflict actually. So it is basically because of individuals has become divisible. Then our state are divided on the basis of language. Language is also come under culture, but addressing religion is because of majority population and history. Yes, I mean, the cultural nationalism, one of the key feature of cultural nationalism is actually the language, because through language we express, and through expression we think, and through thinking we try to connect, right? Then Mukesh is asking, can we say India is a state which is consists of many nations? I mean, that is what left intellectuals position, that there are many nations within the India. But looking at the definition of the nation, as I said, there are, a nation means there is three things. And what are the three things of a nation? That is land, people, and culture. If you take these three things, then you can find many nations in India. But at the same time, India as a nation is also having land, also having people, and also having a culture. I mean, if you go to outside the India, then you easily identify with other Indians, and you easily feel that 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 person is belonging to my culture, right? So within India you may not feel, but outside the India you can feel. So I think in my reading I felt that I mean, India is a nation, and there are also many nations within the India, right? Okay. Then another question, sir. What are the steps to be taken to complete the decolonizing our mind? I think I have already answered it. That I think we have collected a lots of questions. Let speaker answer all. Okay. Does Hitler use political nationalism to influence the cultural nationalism? In fact, uh, in Italy, right, in the Nazi government, political nationalism, succeeded the cultural nationalism, right? So Nazi people, I mean, they are united on the basis of race, on the basis of common history and common exploitation, and that's why the Nazi state it become very strong, right? Sir, what are the similarities and differences between Vivekananda's nationalism and Aurobindo's nationalism? What are those ideas in present time? I mean, the similarity of Vivekananda nationalism and Aurobindo nationalism is that cultural nationalism must precede the political nationalism, and both were combining political nationalism and cultural nationalism. And the difference, I mean, there is no much difference between them. I mean, the only difference is that one is talking about decolonizing mind, other is talking about spiritual revolution, and decolonizing mind is also related with the spiritual revolution. So there is much similarity than differences. Right.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Himanshu. We really had a very wonderful interaction on a very debatable topic, because hardly we can agree on some of the basic definitions of nationalism. So definitely a subject like nationalism is ought to espouse a lot of debates, lot of ideas. But the good thing is that we are open to debate, and Dr. Himanshu has been very kind enough to respond most of the questions of the participants. And in fact, I'm extremely pleased to see some of the very senior colleagues across the state who have also joined and actively participated in the discussion. Now I request my colleague, Dr. Banita Mahanandia, to kindly offer the formal vote of thanks to Dr. Himanshu for such a wonderful lecture. Dr. Banita, please.
Thank you, sir. Now it is a time to wind up the webinar. So before that, it is important to offer a formal vote of thanks. So I, Dr. Banita Mahanandia, on behalf of the School of Political Science and Gangadhar Meher University, thanks Dr. Himanshu Mishra for giving such an illuminating speech on the topic, which is very important for all of us to understand. I also acknowledge my gratitude to our HOD sir, Professor Gyana Ranjan Swain, who always bring such an excellent speakers, not only for student, but it is great moment for all other faculty members as well. Last but not the least, thank you all dear students. Without your participation, I think this webinar would not be a successful one. Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, so I am stopping the recording. Okay.
So thank you all.